Welcome back to Tailored Talks. I am Brad.
And I'm Will.
How's it going?
It's going quite well, actually,
Awesome.
In my 40th year of existence.
Happy birthday to Will, fresh off his 40th birthday trip to West Palm Beach.
Indeed, an old Palm Beach as well.
Yes. What is on the wrist this morning?
Oh,
Very
man.
special wrist check today.
I have a Rolex Datejust. It's from 1989, two-tone with a black tapestry dial, which is quite rare. Box and paper.
Inside joke. Will's been looking at this watch for a while and
Indeed.
finally made the purchase. We're very happy for him.
The procurement.
Yes.
And yourself.
So I have a 60s, mid-60s Omega Seamaster on today.
Love it.
So probably, I'm a leather strap guy, probably one of my favorites. Great size, vintage of course. So yes.
And a subtle nod to Don Draper.
Yes, absolutely. Any nod to Mr. Draper.
There we go. All right, so today we're talking about the power of a brand, which of course we're very passionate about.
Very passionate. I think the essence is even what we do and why we do it. Of course, why branding is important. A lot of people confuse, or you could confuse this with aspects of the customer experience, but we're not just talking about the OMJ brand, we're talking about people's personal brand. So of course, our branding goes into our customer experience, but the OMJ brand, we'll define it, talk about a little bit about our own branding story, a little quiet luxury, what that is, some people may not know, the value of a personal brand, and of course, I think brands that we admire.
Great. I can't wait to delve in, but we have had a recent occurrence here at the store. Would you like to elaborate?
We did have a break-in. So depending on when you hear this podcast, this past week, we did have a break-in. I feel very fortunate. Could have been a lot worse.
Totally.
They took, nothing they took cannot be replaced. So very thankful.
It's not the kind of customer experience we ideally hope for around here.
No. I was thinking a lot about it because I think our response, and I have to give a big thank you to the community, was really important for me to think about, and how we talked about it, I think, is really easy, and obviously it's a bit of a traumatic scenario no matter who you are, right?
Sure.
I think I've always known, like, where we are, we're in South End, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. I just always knew, hey, we'll probably have a break-in at some point. So that was the number one thing. And then also, too, and I've got a coach, a business coach, and then I, of course, coach others as a passion, other small businesses. So the first thing to come to mind was really the mindset, right? I can look at this as woe is us, woe is me, or I can look at it and say, hey, we got to roll with it, got to go with the positive. If there is a positive, we got to go with the positive. So I just took that into account. We, of course, let everybody know. I think I handle traumatic experiences. My coping mechanism is a bit of comedy. So it was more of a, hey, they really loved our spring collection because that's what they took.
And at least they'll be looking good.
Yes,
thereafter.
exactly. And so I think I wanted to take, Felipe the same, like we wanted to take that approach to it as, hey, this happened, we're okay, everything can be replaced. And we're not here to even, I'm not going to post pictures of the perpetrator, right? It just didn't feel, yes, please, we don't want them. But the goal, we don't want them stealing stuff. And I'm certainly not happy that they stole from us. But I think maybe the mindset of, hey, we could maybe turn this into something for the better. And that's mindset and being positive and trying to stay positive through adversity. Go back and listen to our adversity podcast. But to me, that just felt like the right thing to do, and I was just very blown away by the community's support. I think friends reaching out, it was nice. And I think that's because how we handled it as a brand, people wanted to root for us that much more, perhaps.
Sure. Yeah, I love this idea of opportunity through adversity.
Yep.
And now we have a mural going up as well.
We do have a mural, so we got a lot of social equity, I would say. That wasn't the intent, but it turned out to be the case. So really, Charlotte, thank you. Charlotte has definitely rallied around us, and we're so very thankful.
So, speaking of brands, we are one.
Indeed.
So for you, what is branding exactly?
So, what is a brand really? What is that? That's a loaded question, but there's multiple ways to look at it. Of course, there's the typical logos, color schemes, but I think it goes beyond that. It's the feeling, the identity. This is where it ties into customer experience or experiential retail. It's how you feel, the intentional vibe of the company or individual and what they exude.
Sure, and I think you've hit on it really well. Do you have any sort of examples as to a particular brand that you feel like is really doing it well, say within the menswear, women's wear space?
So I think the way I think about things, and maybe I'll take this in two parts. So I think for a lot of, we're in fashion, so we may look at this slightly different. Things that inspire us, like I instantly think of a Ralph Lauren or a Laura Piana.
Indeed.
Always on point, right? And we're not talking chaps.
Right.
We're talking Polo, Ralph Lauren, especially like Purple Label.
Purple Label.
Everything is on point, right? That inspires me. But I think as a typical consumer, this goes beyond. I think about a lot of like golf brands that are out there. Well, I think the ones doing it the best right now are the brands that have this interactive piece to it. That's part of their branding, right? So especially with golf is really big. I think of a brand like Malbon.
Right.
It's very specific. It's definitely not for me. I know what they're doing, and I think they do a great job. And that's a brand people really get behind because of their branding and how they position themselves. I'll never forget, I was watching the Masters 2 years ago, and Jason Day, who is sponsored, or I think he owns a percentage of Malbon.
Ah, the Australian.
Yes. He was wearing, and it was baggy pants. He was getting so much hate.
There may have even been like a cargo pocket.
Cargo pocket, right? Like people were hating on him so much. But then I read this great article, and it was like, people were like embarrassed for him, is what the gist was. But they were like, if only 1% of the people ordered from them based off of the coverage and the polarization of this brand, they're a multi-million-dollar company.
Instant cachet.
And so I was like, you know what? That is branding. They're not trying to get every golfer. They're trying to get a segment of golfer because it's a multi-billion-dollar brand, and they're using their branding. They've created a brand. So I think that was. What about for you?
That's an excellent example. For me, it's always been Ralph Lauren. So you can look as far back as 1967 when they started. There's something about that sort of sporting heritage, a lot of like the English undertones, if you will. It just gives you a feeling. You immediately are transported, but you also want to be a part of that particular universe. It allows you to be the best version of yourself, and whether it be the logo itself, but even beyond that. He transcends all borders of branding.
I love it. I remember the Eastridge Mall Belk and the really nice marketing of Polo. You're like, I want to be on a beach like that guy wearing that Polo.
There's something so aspirational about it.
Even as a young kid in Gastonia.
Indeed.
At Belk. Yeah.
And here we are.
Yeah.
So as far as branding is concerned, can you speak to how even not branding something is a branding choice? So the unintentional decisions that tell a story.
I think it's the small details, and I think that's becoming more prevalent. I think as more sophisticated people are in roles or starting brands, right? Anybody can start a brand these days. I think the bar has really been raised, and specifically in this unintentional branding. They're purposely not telling you about, right, that's the hook. That's the inquisitive, hey, I want to look a little bit further, right? I think a lot of brands do this really well, and they have this sort of, you're in the club, right? When you think of especially higher fashion brands do this. You look at the streetwear, kind of the streetwear brands, the Kith and the Supreme. It's about exclusivity and, hey, we're specifically not going to brand like everybody else because we're not like everybody else.
Sure. Yeah, I love that. And obviously you're seeing that sprout up in multiple areas of the market. And of course, ultimately what comes from that is people pining for those objects, something that's the ultimate differentiator on the street, perhaps. So
Early on, there was definitely like talk of a model of the release or the, as it's called, the drop, right? We should drop a collection or do a collection. And we did a few like very specific small batch releases. And I love that aspect of it. Mad respect goes to the brands that do it. It is not easy to constantly do that. Innovate, have a short, small run of things, release it, build the anticipation, just constant.
forget scale.
Forget scale. It sounds easy, right? It sounds like the blueprint, we only make a few and everybody will come. But you have to build the brand before you get the people wanting to buy it. They don't just buy it because there's only a few. They buy it because it's the mass of people want the brand. It's a bit chicken or the egg is how it feels.
Sure.
But it's so hard to execute that, so I always give a lot of respect to brands that are able to do that. We do not use that model. Our version of that is the one-of-one collection, and that's basically there's literally only one made.
Which that's fun too.
It is fun. It is fun, but it's a lot of work, and I always look at that, and that's a lot of times when I'm talking to other brands and they're asking like of ways to do it, I'm like, yes, it is great, but it is so hard to execute that. Yeah, there are other ways.
Speaking of one, let's talk about personal branding. So what does your, outfit say ultimately about you before you even speak?
I think a brand, I think maybe this is something that so many guys actually, they have a really hard time with. That's something I struggled with, certainly growing up. It's what story do I want to tell? And a lot of times as guys, we're not even thinking that far in advance.
There's a bit of a clone mentality.
Right. Honestly, for many guys, there's no space to even think about what I'm wearing says about me. It's clueless, right? Forget remembering to take the trash out. Being intentional about what you're wearing, forget about it. No guys are doing that. But I think there's a huge importance of this, and we'll talk about this in another area of this podcast, but the power of that personal brand. Yeah, I would love your take on that.
I'm really encouraged by the current landscape because I feel like guys are given more of a pass than ever before from a fashion perspective. You see it on every runway virtually. And so I'm very encouraged by the current landscape and where it's going as well. We're able to express ourselves in ways that perhaps previous generations were not.
Agreed. It's definitely and faceted, multicultural. You think of the 60s and it was dress up and that was it, right? Now, depending on what you do for your career, dressing up will look a little bit different. What you're wearing will look a little bit different. And it can be a very powerful message in who you are before you even, like you say, walk into a room.
And you've spoken to this several times, just elevating ever so slightly, standing out in a professional setting or maybe even just in a social setting, just puts you on higher ground a lot of times, perhaps being even a little more daring along the way, taking some chances and risks and so forth, I think can be a real positive.
So the OMJ branding journey, this is something we've hit on in different podcasts for sure. And in prepping for this one, I actually went back and I was looking through the archives, aka my iCloud.
The old relics.
It has certainly come a long way. That is also something people will ask is, how'd you create the brand? And I laugh, that's such a loaded question. But I really thought a lot about it. OMJ's branding journey has really shifted quite a bit over the years. 12 years. When we started, it was button-downs, polos, accessories like ties and things like that. T-shirts.
Leather koozies.
Leather koozies. People still ask for those, by the way. We were getting into sport coats, but it was this elevated casual. And even the name, it was Old Mason Jar. And we love the name, and I have talked about how we came up with the name. It's a very sentimental. It came from my grandmother. She canned in mason jars till she passed.
I love that.
There was a very vintage, timeless, classic vibe, and that was what it was. And then as we got into custom suiting, things just started to shift. And then
All thanks to you.
yeah, that's another episode as well. If it was up to others, we may never have done it, but I'm glad we did. But things were shifting. Felipe and I were growing, so we're getting into more elevated pieces. Suiting, there was really a need for suiting. So as our taste grew, it moved away from vintage more into the mid-century modern, like a cleaner, simpler, touch of modern.
Even the space we're in.
Timeless, right. Our old space was a very different brand than this space. The old space was exposed brick. We had pallets as walls, quite rustic, and it fit Old Mason Jar. But as we grew and the brand grew, and it just slightly shifted and shifted, and so Old Mason Jar inside a suit, people were having trouble with that, right? That's a brand. They were having trouble with mason jars and elevated suiting. And so ultimately it led to just OMJ and abbreviating, kind of adjusting the brand to fit where we had grown to. I think a lot of brands don't do that. They don't do it timely, but we, thankfully, we're so small, we could do that somewhat on a dime and slowly transition it. But I remember very on never imagining we would be doing custom suiting or even building the brand to be custom suiting. So it had to take shape over time.
And it certainly has taken shape. One thing that I'm struck by is whether intentionally or unintentionally, we've found our space within quiet luxury.
Agreed. Yeah, I think the whole essence of quiet luxury is that it is a bit more subtle and it is a bit less logos. And so I think maybe in parallel with all of our style, right, we've easily transitioned into that.
And your, of course, proclivity for earth tones.
I do love an earth tone.
Always fun.
I do love an earth tone. I think that's where a lot of fashion is going. You will get pops of color. I think it's just so timeless. You can do so much with it. I think the key is versatility.
Sure.
Being able to put something on and wear it with so many other things. To me, that's what speaks to me. So I think that's what we shine through to our customers. There's brands that they really specialize in bright and very memorable branding, and that works great for them.
And I think it's super cool as well that so recently, as I had a request to actually put the embroidered mason jar on a couple of shirts, dress shirts. And just hearing that alone, hey, I want to rep your brand, especially at a time where we've just experienced the break-in. It's just I don't know, it's a nice kind of nod to the community that you've built and we've built here.
Yeah, I think, and I'm always honored or a bit touched when somebody wants the mason jar on it. I know a lot of my family does that too. If you want to score brownie points.
Perhaps a special shout out to Brett Connor.
Yeah, yes. Shout out, Brett. We appreciate that.
All right, so messaging around quality, heritage, and
Yeah.
personalization. Can you speak to those
I think
tenets?
to that, to have somebody say, I think so highly of your brand to want it on my shirt, I think that means a lot. We went through a whole era in late 90s, early 2000s of the logo. People wanted the logo. And then in the mid 2000s on, people didn't want that for certain brands. Now you always have your people that want the really high. They want Gucci or
Fendi, Balenciaga,
Sure.
Louis Vuitton.
Our typical customer said, we don't want American Eagle. We don't want the Eagle. I don't know. I think in a way, having somebody want our logo it's the ultimate. I think it's the ultimate test or compliment.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. And it's nice as well, like from a quality, heritage, and personalization perspective. Of course, quality speaks for itself. Again, and we've touched on this in our previous podcasts, but we can source materials and fabrics from all over the world, even here in the United States, even here in North Carolina. And then the heritage, we're 12 years on, which is incredible to think about. And then personalization, I think, is something that we really underscore and do really well.
Yeah. I don't. We probably don't tout that enough. How many times do we have people come in, nowhere else they've gone can do it?
Sure. And you're not going to say no. If there's a way to do it, we'll do it.
Often say no. But I don't know. There's something about I take this honor to be the one place they go to that can do it. I don't know. I've always want to prove somebody can do this and we can do this and we can do it and nobody else can. There's some inner thing in me.
And we can do it better.
We can do it better. There's an inner thing in me that I don't know. I want to prove that, A, it can be done, and these other places you went to weren't good enough.
Sure. Always up for a challenge here at OMJ. So let's contrast that with the unintentional branding component.
I remember we used to do, what was it? It was like Mason Jar Monday. This is how great we were at branding. We actually had something called Mason Jar Monday. But we were called Old Mason Jar. And so it was like, all right, anything with a mason jar is fair game, right? And this, again, we're talking about unintentional branding. So people would tag us and stuff. It became very home and garden.
Right.
It was like a mason jar filled with screws and bolts, and somebody's in their workshop,
right.
And they're sending me that like mason jar, and I'm like, that is not the brand we're going for. But I laugh, and Felipe and I was so dumb. I would if people tag me, I would repost it.
But hey, carpenters and mechanics alike, we're here to serve you as well.
The everyman.
Yes, indeed.
And Felipe was like, Brad, we're going way too home and garden magazine here, right? We are a fashion brand, an elevated brand. Yes, that's nice. It's a mason jar, but not just any mason jar, right?
Sure.
So Mason Jar Monday is no longer a thing.
But folks, we're bringing it back.
We have to help ourselves, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
But I'm blown away and by the community aspect that's been built around this brand. And that wasn't something that was ever necessarily a singular focus of ours. It just blossomed and spawned.
It happened organically. I think there's a relatability to it. This is the South, right? This is what we love about being in the South. It's community. It's having something that people can in some way relate to, whether it's their grandmother that they grew up with. And we don't take ourselves too serious,
Sure.
right? There's a whole grounding to the simpler times. There's and I hope people think of us as the neighbor next door. Maybe this just dressed a little bit nicer.
Sure. Yeah. No, I love that. And again, making it simple but significant.
Simple but significant. So one thing I wanted to get to, and we'll skip over the quiet luxury till after we talk about this, but the personal branding.
Sure.
And this is something I've got to brag on Will here since the fourth grade. No, before the fourth grade, but that's when Will and I were in the same fourth grade class. Shout out Miss Barnwell.
There we go. Mrs. Barnwell.
He's always had a personal brand. And I think now more than ever, this is so important. And again, like we talked about at the top, for guys, it is so very hard to even think about that. It gives them anxiety. Sometimes it gives me anxiety still, like thinking about what am I going to pack for this trip? Now I've got even more pressure because I have to stay on brand, but I've got to I've got to wear a certain thing that goes with where I'm at. Look, I get it, we get it. Perhaps Will doesn't get it because he's always on point. But I'm just kidding.
I try, but a lot of practice too.
Talk about how important that personal branding has been in your life.
Honestly, it started at an early age. I will say that my mom in particular sort of instilled it in me to have a bit of flair. It just adds to the confidence level, especially of say a fourth grader Miss Barnwell's class. But it transcends all aspects of life. It sets the tone. It's a bit like putting on armor or a shield, if you will. But it also is something that, for me, it really speaks to my sort of inner true self. And if you can find ways and elements of bolstering that in your day-to-day, I think that's hugely integral, perhaps to your own success or just how you navigate the often choppy waters of life. So for me, though, it's especially now as a quadragenarian.
That sounds really bad.
It is about versatility and how can I find the interplay amongst garments, and along the way, just taking sort of minor risks and building upon those. Also, the scholarship that goes into it. There's so much out there, and so for me, the personal branding has been invaluable because it's often left a bit of an indelible mark. Folks will say, wow, where did you get that tie? The cut of your pants? Or
People are always asking Will where he got everything.
And now it's OMJ.
The company man.
Indeed, the company man. And I've also always been forward thinking. Like, I've always had such a sort of a penchant for old Hollywood, but also finding the nuances. I might see a 2-inch cuff, say, from following a brand, an Italian brand, on Instagram and thinking, wow, but Cary Grant or Fred Astaire wore that 2-inch cuff in 1944. Hey, let's give that a shot. What goes around comes around. And
Love that.
those are my sort of tips and tricks as to what personal branding has done for me. I've noticed more and more in recent years, especially since working here at OMJ, that it's taken off. People are taking note, and they're coming around to some of these sort of nuanced possibilities within the menswear space as well as the women's wear space.
That's a very good point. And I think people maybe, if you're an OMJ client, you realize this because we talk about it quite a lot here. But look, I will say this, it has never been easier to stand out with just a little bit of effort.
Sure.
The world that we're in, if you can put a little bit of effort in, you're going to get the maximum benefit of that. And that's because the world we're in has become so casual. And we talked about it at the top. There's a huge gap in what people do and what they wear and their groups and all those things. But if you can elevate yourself just a little bit, you now have an instant advantage.
Truly. I love that. And that's something to chew on.
Yes. And I think honestly, maybe that's the biggest value that we provide that we probably don't talk about enough, is that we help people do that. It doesn't require a lot of money. I mean, how often do we recommend things that we don't even make because it fits their price point and their budget and what they're about? Yes, a lot of the things that we do make are they can be expensive. But you're going to get maximum versatility out of that. We're going to tell you how to style that. We're going to tell you how to wear that. We're going to tell you how to wear it to your advantage and where to wear it. And so the value you get out of that is honestly, in the right circumstances, quite priceless.
Sure.
When you walk into a job and your whole mindset has shifted and your confidence has grown, and the opportunities that you get at work or in your friend group, right? It really is priceless.
And you have, I think, a specific
Well,
example?
I've told this story many times before, and we have many stories like this, but this was very early on. I had a buddy, average dresser, he would admit this, right? Like he would show up and he wore what everybody else would wear, right? He couldn't think about it, and it was hard for him, and so he just looked at what the guy next to him wore, and that was his thing. But we were starting this, and he was interested in it, so we started making him pieces that elevated his style. And I kid you not, within 6 months, average dresser to the best dressed guy at his work and the guy everybody else started coming to for advice on what to wear. Hey man, do these socks, how do you like these socks?
So cool.
What about this? Hey man, I was looking at this jacket. What do you think? And I kid you not, his confidence, his performance, he's like, it changed my life. It absolutely changed my life because I was average at, my work was great, but I was average at these from branding, his personal brand, right? And then he became the guy. And there's such a power in that.
I love that story. And there are a myriad of examples around this town and many others, which is just super encouraging as well. So any practical branding advice?
Here's the thing. I think this is why guys don't do it, right? It's the same thing with working out, eating right, sleeping right.
Sure.
We talked about this. Will and I both.
Sleep.
The answer is right there. Get more sleep, and that will that will change our
And
lives.
it's easy
Right?
to think of sleep hygiene, but
Sleep
it is a
hygiene.
thing.
What gets people, and this is the hang up. So if you can power through it like the diet, like the whatever the thing is, it takes consistency. You've got to do it. You've got to work at it. And if you do it for long enough, you see the results. I call it my method. The 2 steps forward, 1.99 back.
Is this a pyramid?
This is not a pyramid.
I love it, though.
This is my mindset method, right? No, I'm just kidding. But this is life, guys. You take 2 steps forward, you take 1.99 back. In the moment, daily, weekly, even monthly, it's so hard to see the progress. So we give up. We stop doing it. But if you do it, 6 months later, a year later, the progress is quite significant. This is the mindset we've used with OMJ. If I looked at it day to day, I'd be like, how are we even in business? And then I look at it a year out, 2 years out, 12 years out. I'm like, oh my goodness, how in the world have we made it this far? We've come so far, right? So that's the key. Like, you just got to do it, and you've got to keep at it. It's the same thing. Whatever you do in life, right? Like, everybody who's great at their job, they've done it for long enough. They become consistent at it, right? Whatever you want to do, you don't get there instantly.
Sure.
You've got to do it. And that's the same thing like with branding, right? It's the same thing with your personal brand. You've got to work at it. You got to put the time in. But if you do it, you will succeed.
I think that's fantastic. A rule to live by: consistency.
Consistency, yes. I'd be interested, I mean, we've heard everything here. Too many eye rolls. What are some excuses you've heard from guys?
Ooh, I think a lot of it is peer group oriented. So they don't want to be the guy singled out. Perhaps they do deep down, but they're not going to take that leap because a colleague or a best friend or just say a fringe friend might think something of them.
Yeah, and
might
guys,
judge them prior to even
You're so right.
wanting to talk to them. Or they might even feel shunned as a result, even into a friendship. There's this like strength in numbers idea, or the herd mentality, if you will.
Many of our friends,
Sure.
if they started dressing well, they would get made fun of.
Right.
Oh, what do you think? Who do you think you
But
are?
if you've got a golf club's insignia embroidered on your polo,
It's safe space.
you're good to go. It's somehow an instant membership.
100%. I hadn't really thought about that side of it, but it's peer pressure to not go outside the box.
And objectively speaking, there's nothing wrong with that as far as a golf shirt with a club's insignia on it. It's just that for me, too, it's always been about creativity. And so it takes that creative component out of it. And that's something that I would stress to anyone that's trying to elevate, create. And I think that's something that, again, I think we do really well here. A lot of brands are doing it well as well. And I think it's something that we can continue to build upon.
And this is what I think we do a great job teaching people, again, that underlying value of an OMJ. Because I've shared, I mean, you could apply this really with anything, watches, what you're wearing. There's more than one way to stand out. How many times do we talk to a guy who wants the newest Rolex because he wants to be, that's the herd, they have the Pepsi, it's not even the Pepsi now, I don't know what it is, the newest one that people
Hulk.
want. The Hulk, sure.
It could be Batman.
Sure.
It could be the Bruce Wayne.
And no shade to that. I get it. It's a very nice watch. But I'm like, you know what? Like, I'll never keep up with the Joneses, right? And most of us never will. If we play that game, you're destined to lose.
Right.
So how impactful and is it? And now hopefully this will be an aha moment for people, our tens of listeners, right? I would choose to go another route. It's why I love vintage. It's why you love vintage. You can end around the peer group by doing something they haven't thought of, still seen in a high light. I don't need a Hulk. I want a vintage Rolex, perhaps with a tapestry dial
Here.
that you can't find everywhere.
Discontinued in 2005.
Perhaps with a double stamp Tiffany & Co.
Ooh.
You know, that's...
Now you're singing your own praises.
I can go to any watch club. You can go to any watch club event. Your watch will be nowhere near the price that these guys pay, but they can have a conversation with you. They're not threatened by you because you're not wearing a $100,000 Patek, but they respect that you know what you're talking about. So it's the same practice in clothing. If you think about it, and like my example with my friend at work, so often in your peer groups, your work groups, this the competition. So just change. If you don't like what they're saying, famous Don Draper, change the conversation.
There you go.
You can stand out in a totally different way that's non-threatening. This is what I always tell people. When I was in finance, I wasn't trying to talk finance with these guys. I'm talking about starting a clothing company. That's creative. That's different. That's something that I'm not threatening to them. It's attractive because there's a creative element. There's that you tap into that. I wish I could do that. And that's interesting, and I want to talk to him about it, right?
Sure.
So you do that same thing. That's what your power of your personal brand can do. So you can't just show up and say, I'm the best dresser now. You have to take a different approach. You know, the excuse I got, and I love it, and I laugh about it now, probably some PTSD, especially during COVID. Guys would walk in the store, and you could see it was their own like insecurity, right? And I always know instantly out of their mouth, I don't ever have to dress up now. And I was like, why are you in here, sir?
Or no one's going to see me from the waist down.
Why are you in here then? Are you just taunting me?
Sure.
What? Basically, you're like slapping me in the face.
Adding insult to injury.
Yes, but I really thought about that, and it was an excuse. It made them feel better to now not have to worry about that. So that stuck with me, not the trauma that it imposed, but it was they felt so much anxiety about going to work and putting on clothes that they would walk into a clothing store during a pandemic and brag about it. Let that sink in. If one of you guys are listening to this, I will take payment in buying clothes as penance. But to me, it was a psychological question that needed to be answered. It was, how do we remove the excuses from it? I work from home. We have a casual office. Guys, there's no excuse to dressing better. Now, you don't have to do that every day. You certainly don't have to dress up in a suit and tie or a sport coat. But you want to take what everybody else is doing and elevate it slightly. That's what you need to do. Yes, if everybody's in polos and khakis, do not come in wearing a suit. Perhaps buy a nicer chino and a button-down that fits.
And don't expect a windfall. These are incremental wins.
And again, consistency. You got to keep doing it. But You can always do a little bit better, and trust me, people notice this stuff. They notice when you care and do the little things. And they might not say anything, but they notice.
Where do you see AI in all of this?
So,
As a Cornell man.
I am a Cornell man now. Can you say that if you get a certificate?
Totally.
I did finally graduate from my certificate program through
Bravo.
AI at Cornell. One thing we're working on is a AI branded chat that helps people with their personal brand. And it's in the OMJ voice, right? What do I wear with this? How do I elevate this? Give me a 3-month plan to become the best dressed guy at my office. And here's the makeup of my office, right? It's 100 people and the normal attire is this, and it will tell you, hey, here in 3 months, here's what you do, weekly basis on how to become the best dressed guy at your office. This is where AI is going, to help people.
For sure.
So in this extension of OMJ, I can only reach so many people that walk through the door, but we can build AI to really help people do this on an infinite basis. And that's what it's really all about, like helping us.
And you're using your certificate.
I'm using my certificate, yes.
As an Ivy Leaguer.
And I'll leave the personal brand with this because this was so impactful for me. This was early in my career at Bank of America. I had a great manager, and he was dressed well. He was certainly not dressed to the nines. But he dressed really well. He had great presence. He had a great personal brand. Everybody loved him. Like, he was always presenting. He was always doing these. And I was like, hey, I was just very inquisitive. Like, I want to be you. Also, if you want to give people compliments, and they'll give you all the answers. But he told me, I'll never forget the conversation. He said, I always made it a point to dress, to always have a jacket at my desk, to be put together, because I never knew when I might get the opportunity. I never knew when something may come up and my boss has to step out and he calls me in to present on his behalf because he knows that I'm always going to be put together. I want to be always put together for the chance that I may get an opportunity, and that always stuck with me. I lived it every day, and there were many times where our executives may have a presentation, and they may pull me in. I may not really be involved, but they pulled me in because they knew I was going to be ready to go from a visual perspective.
Sure.
And they could take me to any meeting. Even if I didn't know what the meeting was about, they knew I had enough knowledge, but I was, more importantly, going to be there to set the standard for who they were meeting.
And look at you now.
Wow.
And to that point, and something that we've touched on previously as well, we really live these principles. We're not just throwing on suits and filming and recording a podcast.
Right.
We really are living in these items. We take great passion in what we do, and we hope to evangelize it as much as possible.
We live it, we love it. We hope that shines through. So, moving things into brands that we admire. So I know this is Will's segment written all over it. Takes so much. I still ask him. Will gives me advice on this all the time. What are brands doing it well? And I just feel like you've got a great mind for this across industry.
Sure.
Not just us, but across the industry.
For me, again, Ralph Lauren. First and foremost, Ralph Lauren. Brunello Cucinelli, super interesting. There's definitely a humanistic approach to how he's conducting his business. Solomeo in Italy, basically he runs the town, and he really strikes hard at the sort of human element. He really wants the more familial aspect to pervade the overarching ethos there, which is super cool. The King of Cashmere,
yes,
if you will, and really giving back, which I think is something that we've done really well here. I know that you're passionate about that as well. Todd Snyder in New York, obviously a disciple of Ralph Lauren, having worked there for a number of years. Sid Mashburn goes without saying what he's doing in Atlanta, as well as his wife Ann, and Jay Muser.
Yeah.
In New York, I think is doing
Christopher Street?
some fun things. Yes, indeed, Christopher Street. And just tapping into the side of menswear that I think is still approachable. So it's not this overly luxurious point of view, but it strikes a balance between approachability and livability, wearability, but also aspiration. And so I think that those brands in particular do a very good job at speaking to some of the brands that we admire. What about you?
I really love Sid Mashburn, Todd Snyder, and again, I love the clothing aspect, but I'm a big vibe guy. So I love the vibe that they create, and
They're so detail oriented.
so detail oriented. Billy Reed is a personal favorite. I mean,
You're
it's
here.
blend casual with luxury.
And you even met Mr. Reed.
I've met Mr. Reed. I told him I was starting a brand, and what advice would he give? He said, "Don't do it." And then he laughed, and he gave some great advice, and something I'll never forget. But we've, over the years, even a friendly across Instagram support. Billy Reed has also been
Well,
supportive.
CFDA winner.
Yes, he's been supportive of us as we've grown.
And I think there's a through line with all of these brands, and that's humility.
Humility, absolutely. You're so right. And I think that's the model. And brands don't need that, right? But if they want to reach the larger audience, that's the ticket. Some don't need to do that. It's not their model. They don't care. They want this 2% of people, so they don't care about the other 98%. That's their model. But I think to reach the maximum amount of people, community, to have a give back element, to do all those things, you've just got to be relatable. You've got to be authentic. And every brand you've mentioned, to the degree you're saying, even watching the Ralph Lauren documentary, it's very obvious. He was authentic. He loved what he did. He did it from the ground up. He earned it. And it's been lasting because he lives it. Still in advertisements today. And I don't know how old he is now, but he looks great today.
He'll be 86 this year.
Oh,
Perhaps already is 86. But
I hope to be 86 wearing an OMJ jacket.
incredible. We'll be there, folks. We just have to get some sleep.
Yes.
So
Yes.
to the detail side of things, one thing that calls to mind is the packaging, the fonts, even the hold music when you're reaching out to these companies. Can you address that as far as how those are takeaways even for our own business?
Felipe is excellent at this. I think a lot of times this is something I've had to grow into, but it all matters, right? From the rug when you walk in to the cleanliness of the store to all the hangers matching to when you ship a package, right? It's in a new box. How often? This is the first lesson learned. Any new employee, we're shipping a customer something, right? Like they're just like, maybe we're just doing them a favor and shipping it, so they want to just grab any old box. And I'm like, no. It matters, right?
Sure.
And it may not matter to that person. Again, we're doing them a favor. Hey, just shipping something back for them, maybe alterations, maybe whatever. It all matters. And the best brands do it so well. Even from the thank you note is on point, right? The tissue paper is branded.
Even caring for the garment.
Yes.
We've really highlighted that element as well with QR codes but having something physical.
This
something
is where
tangible.
it goes. Yeah, this is where it goes into the experience part of it. But I think your best brands have that experience, and they have that brand that's intentionally thought through and on point, and it's cohesive and it's the vibe. And that's any brand that does that well. It doesn't need to be something I would even wear to admire. Yeah.
So as far as brands with intention or intentionality, can you talk about where OMJ stands within that space?
I think I'm trying to think of the shift. I would say the shift for me became, we touched on this in the experiential retail episode, it became less about reaching as many people as possible as I want to be the best I can for our core clients and to help them make it about them, right? Help them be the best version of themselves. Listening, what do they need? That's what we've decided we want to be about. It's not just selling clothing to people, it's helping people become the best versions of themselves to empower them.
Certainly, and I think that's something that can bode well for you in life in general, is just becoming more of an active listener and taking into consideration folks and their, say, wants and needs, but also encouraging them to say, hey, let's take a leap here.
What is your biggest advice?
Advice. From a branding perspective, I'd have to say it's be true to yourself. And I've hit on this previously as well, but that's always just really served me well over the years. I don't pretend to be something I'm not. You know, you'll hear that expression, fake it until you make it. Certainly. But I think there's an element of it that if you do it with consistency and you find a passion for it, you're ultimately going to find that you alone are your best steward of your own personal style and your own personal branding. And it'll serve you well. It served me well, and I hope to pay it forward in my sort of role here at OMJ.
You can follow him. What is the Instagram handle?
Sir Ridgway Sartorial. And Sir Ridgway as well.
We'll tag it in the notes. Yes. And on that, I think, and we didn't touch as much as we could have, certainly, but this element of quiet luxury. I actually think that it sounds, quiet luxury makes it honestly sound unobtainable.
All I hear is the theme song from Succession.
Watch Succession, that's it. That feeling you get while you're watching them and you're like, I don't know what this vibe I'm feeling that I'm really attracted to is quiet luxury, right? There's no branding. They're dressed properly for their life. And that's really what quiet luxury is.
Right, and I think doing basics at their absolute best, whether it's a cashmere polo or sweater or even hat in Laura Piana's
A plain
situation.
plain blue hat. That's it.
There's something about it that's just transcendent. And again, comes back to this piece of the aspirational bit that quiet luxury brings with it.
I love it. I love it.
This has been fun.
It's been fun. So, guys, if you need help with your personal brand, if you'd like to support a local brand who had a break-in, just want some extra support and love, we're here. We're
All
still
hands
here.
on deck.
All hands on deck. If you have any needs, if you have any questions, please reach out. Again, we clearly love doing this. I clearly love helping people. I personally love helping not just customers, but also other small businesses figure their brand out.
And if you can't tell, we love being with each other too.
Yes, we have a lot of fun. We love doing this. But stay tuned, follow along, and we'll see you guys shortly.
Indeed. Thanks, guys. That was great, man.
That was awesome.
I like my mother, after I mentioned her, said wheel. And that's when I went, will. So if you'll edit that out, we're good. She's always a double syllable in my name.
yes,
So if you don't mind editing that out, that would be ideal.
I will. Southern moms.
Oh, Southern moms, double syllables. Quite entertaining.
Yes, yes.